Hey everyone, welcome back to Roughing the Past. You think you know football? You know what a touchdown is, what holding looks like, maybe even what constitutes pass interference. But the NFL rulebook is over 80 pages long, and buried in there are some absolutely bizarre rules that almost never come up. But when they do, they leave everyone scratching their heads. Today, we're diving deep into the weird, the obscure, and the downright confusing rules that exist in the National Football League. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll know more about NFL rules than half the replacement refs from 2012. Let's get into it. Rule 1. The fair catch kick. We're starting with one of the most obscure rules in all of football. The fair catch kick. And yes, this is a real rule that's still in the NFL rulebook today. Here's how it works. After a team makes a fair catch on a punt or a kickoff, they have the option to attempt a free kick from that spot. It's basically a field goal attempt, but the defending team has to stand 10 yards away and can't rush. And there's no snap. The kicker just places the ball and kicks it. If it goes through the uprights, it's worth 3 points. This rule dates back to the early days of football, and it almost never happens. The last successful fair catch kick in the NFL was by Joey Sly for the Chargers in 2024 against the Broncos. Before that, Phil Dawson tried one in 2013. Before that, you have to go all the way back to 1976 when Ray Wersching of the Chargers made one. The reason it's so rare is that you need very specific circumstances. A fair catch late in the half when you're close enough to attempt a long field goal, but not close enough that you'd rather just run a play. It's football's rarest scoring play that everyone forgets exists. Rule 2. The palpably unfair act. This one sounds made up, but I promise it's real. Rule 12, Section 3, Article 3 covers what the NFL calls a palpably unfair act. Basically, if a team does something so ridiculously unfair that it's not specifically covered by the rulebook, the referee can award whatever penalty they think is appropriate, including awarding a touchdown to the opposing team. What would qualify? The most famous example is hypothetical but often discussed. If a player on the sideline runs onto the field and tackles someone who's clearly going to score, the ref could just award the touchdown. Or if a coach trips a player running down the sideline, which actually happened in 2013 when Steelers coach Mike Tomlin stuck his leg out and tripped Jacoby Jones. The beauty of this rule is its vagueness. It gives refs the nuclear option for situations where someone is clearly trying to cheat in a way that the rulebook doesn't specifically address. It's the "you know what you did was wrong" rule. Rule 3. The drop kick. Most people think that the drop kick went extinct with leather helmets, but it's actually still a legal play in the NFL. A drop kick is when you drop the ball and kick it immediately after it touches the ground. It can be used for a field goal, extra point, or even to score 3 points on a regular play. The last successful drop kick in an NFL game was by Doug Flutie on January 1, 2006 for the New England Patriots. Flutie drop-kicked an extra point in the final game of his career, becoming the first player to successfully execute a drop kick in 64 years. Why don't teams use it? Because modern footballs are designed for passing, not bouncing. The pointed end makes the bounce completely unpredictable, unlike the rounder rugby-style balls of the past. But technically, if you wanted to drop kick a 60-yard field goal instead of place kicking it, you absolutely could. It would just be incredibly stupid. Rule 4. The emergency third quarterback. For years, the NFL had a weird rule about emergency quarterbacks. Teams could dress 45 players for a game, but only 46 if the 46th was a third quarterback who could only play if both quarterbacks were injured and unable to continue. Here's the weird part. If you used your emergency quarterback, the other 2 quarterbacks couldn't come back in, even if they felt better. And the emergency quarterback couldn't play any other position, couldn't enter the game for any other reason, and couldn't even hold for field goals unless both quarterbacks are hurt. This rule was in place from 1991 to 2010, and it created some bizarre situations. Teams would sometimes have to decide whether their situation was desperate enough to burn their emergency quarterback. The rule was designed to protect teams from being completely quarterback-less, but it was so restrictive that it sometimes made things worse. The rule was eliminated in 2011, but it remains one of the strangest roster rules in NFL history. Now teams can dress three quarterbacks without the weird restrictions, which makes way more sense. Rule 5. You can't advance a fumble on 4th down. This is the Holy Roller Rule, and it exists because of one of the most controversial plays in NFL history. In 1978, the Raiders were losing to the Chargers with 10 seconds left. Ken Stabler fumbled the ball forward. Pete Banaszak batted it further forward, and Dave Casper kicked it into the end zone and fell on it for a touchdown. The Raiders won. The Chargers were furious. The NFL changed the rules. Now on 4th down, or any down in the final 2 minutes of either half, only the player who fumbles can recover and advance the ball. If anyone else on the offense recovers it, the ball is placed at the spot of the fumble. Or if recovered in the end zone, it's a touchback. This prevents teams from intentionally fumbling the ball forward when they're desperate, which is exactly what the Raiders appeared to do. It's one of the most specific rules in football, and it exists entirely because of one play that happened almost 50 years ago. Rule 6. The untouchable Hail Mary fair catch. Here's a weird intersection of rules that almost never happens. A defensive player can actually call for a fair catch on a Hail Mary attempt if the ball is so high and up in the air that it qualifies as a kick. Wait, what? Well, technically, if a pass is touched by someone and then travels backward through the air, it becomes a kick by rule, and kicks can be fair caught. This almost never happens because passes are usually going forward. But in the chaos of a Hail Mary with multiple deflections, a player could theoretically fair catch the ball. The more practical weird rule about Hail Marys: defensive pass interference can't happen in the end zone on an untimed down. The most a DPI penalty can give you is the 1-yard line, meaning on a final play Hail Mary, defenders could theoretically tackle receivers and the offense would just get one more play from the 1. This creates a bizarre incentive structure on the final play of a game where the rulebook essentially allows defenders to commit egregious fouls in the end zone. Rule 7. The punt out of bounds in the end zone. Most fans know that if you punt the ball out of bounds, the receiving team gets it where it went out. But there's a weird exception. If a punt goes out of bounds in the end zone, it's not a touchback. It comes out to the spot where it crossed the sideline. So, if you punt the ball and it goes out at the 1-yard line of the end zone, the receiving team gets the ball at the 1, not the 20. This creates a weird advantage for having bad accuracy on your punts. Even weirder, this only applies to punts. If you kick off and the ball goes out of bounds in the end zone, it's placed at the 40-yard line, formerly 35. The rules for kicks out of bounds are completely different depending on whether it's a punt or kickoff, for basically no logical reason. This is one of those rules that occasionally catches teams off guard, and you'll see punters trying to keep the ball in bounds even when it's headed for the end zone, because an out-of-bounds punt pins the offense closer than a touchback would. Rule 6. The illegal jersey number catch. In the NFL, eligible receivers must wear certain jersey numbers. Traditionally, only players wearing numbers 1 through 49 and 80 through 89 could catch passes. Offensive linemen wear 50 to 79 and aren't eligible. But here's where it gets weird. An offensive lineman can catch a pass if they report as eligible before the play. However, if they catch the pass without reporting, it's a penalty even if the defense allows it. This created one of the weirdest plays in recent memory. In 2014, the Patriots had offensive linemen report as eligible and ineligible on the same play, confusing the Ravens about who could catch the ball. The Ravens argued it was illegal deception. The Patriots argued it was smart strategy. The NFL later clarified the rules to prevent this exact confusion. The jersey number restrictions have loosened recently, with more positions allowed to wear more previously restricted numbers. But the concept remains. Certain numbers mean certain roles, and breaking those roles requires explicitly reporting it, or you get penalized even if you make a great catch. Rule 9. The safety free kick. Everyone knows that after a safety, the team that gave up the safety has to kick the ball to the other team. But did you know they don't have to punt? They can also place kick, drop kick, or even punt from a tee. This is the only time in football outside of kickoffs where you can tee up a ball and kick it. And because there's no rush allowed on a kick, some teams with strong-legged kickers will place the ball on a tee and boom it as far as possible, effectively turning a safety into a massive field position swing. The most famous strategic use of this? Teams trailing late will sometimes intentionally take a safety, then attempt an onside kick on the free kick after the safety. You give up 2 points, but you get the ball back with a chance to score a touchdown and win. It's incredibly rare, but it's a legitimate strategy when you're down by 1 point with no timeouts and the clock is running out. The safety free kick is one of the most underutilized strategic rules in football, mostly because safeties are rare and teams aren't used to thinking about the options afterward. Rule 10, the frozen clock on penalties. Here's something that affects nearly every game, but most fans don't fully understand. When penalties occur in the final minutes of a half, the clock rules get very strange. If the defense commits a penalty that stops the clock, the offense can choose to have time put back on the clock in the final minute. This prevents defenses from committing penalties just to stop the clock. But it gets weirder. If there's a penalty with under 10 seconds left in the half, the offense can choose to have 10 seconds run off the clock instead of taking the penalty yards. Why would they do this? To prevent the defense from committing penalties to stop the clock and give their team a chance to get the ball back. These rules exist to prevent strategic fouling, but they're so complicated that even TV commentators regularly get them wrong. The interaction between the game clock, play clock, and penalties in the final 2 minutes is its own mini rulebook, and it includes provisions for whether the runner was in bounds, whether the foul occurred before the snap, and whether it was the offense or defense that committed the penalty. And there you have it, 10 weird NFL rules that you probably didn't know existed. From fair catch kicks to palpably unfair acts, the NFL rulebook is filled with bizarre provisions that rarely come up but completely change the game when they do. The craziest part? We only scratched the surface. There's rules about what happens if the ball gets stuck in a jersey, rules about whether you can hide the ball under your shirt, rules about snowballs and foreign substances, and even rules about what color your towel can be. If you learned something new today, smash that like button and subscribe to Roughing the Past for more deep dives into NFL history and rules. Drop a comment below with the weirdest NFL rule you know that we didn't cover. And until next time, remember, just because it's never happened doesn't mean it's not in the rule book.